Welcome to Hamden Through Time, 1938. I am Paul Silvestri, Hamden Municipal Historian, and this is a re-recording of a presentation I gave live during the week-long Hamden Through Time celebration in September 2025. Thought it'd be interesting to start with a recognition of our indebtedness to the Quinnipiac tribe for establishing some of the paths through what they called the land of Havamak, or sleeping giant. You can see on this map here these roads or paths they had through what is now Hamden, and it laid the groundwork for the way our town grew up today. So we'll begin with a few views of Hamden in and around the year 1938. Different specific locations recognizable in town. Compare those locations, those views, to approximately the same views today. Of course, we'll start with Town Hall and the area around it in Centerville. You can see just not very far at all away from Town Hall, there are still empty fields, I think farmland, still active lands actively being farmed. None of the buildings more than 2.5 stories. Compare that to today. And see many more tall buildings. The Wilbercross Parkway across at the bottom. Many more large trees all around. We love our trees in Hamden. If we will go back to the previous photo, you can see where there were houses and not so many trees. Another comparison. We'll move to another iconic Hamden building, of course, the high school. This was actually after 1940 because the Connolly Parkway is visible at the bottom there. But it looked pretty much the same when the high school was first built in 1935. You can see the baseball field and a bit of a football field behind it, not much else. Farms still nearby. Compare it to today, and the back of the Hamden Plaza around back there, much larger high school, stores, parking lots at the bottom. Again, we can compare, go back and forth. Pretty much just the front building of the high school there, and compared to a much larger high school building today. So let's move here to a more distant view of the high school. You can make it out in the back over here. There it is. And you can see, again, a better view of all the farmlands, empty forested land, a little bit of hill on Mixed Avenue, and more farmland right in the back. Some houses along Dixwell there in the Spring Glen section. This here along the diagonally across the bottom is Whitney Avenue, and the part to the down to the corner there is actually in North Haven. The street coming across here, you can barely recognize Skiff Street. And to compare that to today, again, a lot more trees, a lot more buildings at Hamden Martin, Hamden Plaza, and of course, again, the Wilbercross Parkway going through the Hamden Hall athletic facility. So, obviously, getting much larger, much more development and apartments on Mixed Avenue. We go back and forth to the old picture and the new one, and wow, changed a little bit in 80 some years. So, moving on to another neighborhood in Hamden, Whitneyville. Actually, not quite so much change in this area. One interesting thing is that the Whitneyville Food Center at the corner of Whitney Avenue and Ralston Avenue there. This is Putnam Avenue, the Putnam Avenue School there. And then one major difference, there was an empty lot here. And if you look at the same view today, that's where the post office is now. The school is now the central office of Hamden Public Schools. And you can't see the sign, but yes, this is still Whitneyville Food Center in that location there. And again, a lot more trees today. Actually, the old pictures seem to have been taken in winter and the trees were bare, but still a lot more of those trees today. But otherwise, the house is pretty much the same. Let's move to one more neighborhood, the bank section, named for the Hamden Bank and Trust building down here. And again, you can see this area a lot more developed. Well, if you look way off in the distance, you can still see farms not that far, less than a mile away from the from Dixwell Avenue there. You can see a row of stores just under construction here, around the corner of Helen and Circular Avenue and Dixwell, this French Italian import companies. Just make out the sign there. And if you compare to today, yeah, that's still the French Italian liquors there. You can see the stores completed there. One different building here, but again, a lot of the stores the same, a lot of the houses the same, just a lot more trees around. And that bank building still there, though I think sadly now vacant. So in 1938, some Hamden public school students, just a few, but a few of them were still going to school in a one-room schoolhouse. This one here on in West Woods, the West Woods School, and you can see here there's a water pump. I don't know if it had indoor plumbing, and yes, they might have had to use that facility outside there too. So that was the last one-room schoolhouse left in 1938, because in 1937, when other schoolhouse, by this time it expanded to 3 rooms, is the original building here, and there's a wing added on each side, a room on each side, the old Dunbar Hill School. And students probably walked to it, and then when it closed in 1938, they had to be bused to other schools. And we had then a good collection, about 8 very well constructed 2-story schoolhouses. There's the Church Street School that no longer stands. But you can see in the current Church Street School on the same site, they incorporate some of the same architectural elements. Notice a little triangular pediment on top of the building there. And, well, they doubled it, two triangles on top of the building. And the little circular window, they duplicated also. And not far, and this is the graduating class of Church Street School. That was kind of a cool picture. They had all the, of course, it was an 8th grade graduation at the time. All the public schools went from kindergarten or 1st grade to 8th grade, or junior high or middle schools. And not far from there was the Helen Street School, also no longer stands, but is the current Helen Street School, and that just might be one of a bell from one of the old one-room schoolhouses there. Margaret L. Keefe School, and still survives today as the Keefe Community Center. The Newhall Street School, which recently, a few years ago, was given a very fine transition, redevelopment into this business incubator site. So a number of small businesses just getting started up, able to share space in that building before they can go out in their own facilities. And the Putnam Avenue School, as we had seen from a distance in the Whitneyville picture, is today the central office of Hamden Public Schools. Still pretty much the same. And this is one of the few pictures we have of the State Street School. This is actually when it was closing in 1970, the last time the children walked out of that school. After the Christmas break, they started school back up in the new Ridge Hill School. And the State Street School still stands today. Number of uses. And the Spring Glen School. Interesting thing, you can zoom in on this and see there had a separate entrance labeled there for boys, and on the other side behind the tree for girls. And see that Spring Glen School stone above the front door there. The school no longer stands, but in the new school that took its place, they preserved that cornice over the door there, and the cornerstone to date. And Centerville School, which has been preserved as part of the Central Library, Mill Memorial Library. This is on the loading dock storage area there, you can see, I'll go back to the school here, that curved entryway of the door is still where they bring stuff in from the trucks into the library. And in that same facility is the Gordon Waller Hall, so where I gave the presentation originally. You can see here the layout of the original school and how it was added on over the years, and finally in the 1970s as the whole facilities for the library, senior center, and auditorium. And one more school, Mount Carmel School, senior housing on that site now. So, one church that was built or constituted in 1938, the Blessed Sacrament Church, the parish was founded then. It took another year for the church to be built in 1939. And if you look closely, you can see this is the side that faces Circular Avenue. In the 1950s, another wing was added off to the side to Taft Street. You can see it's not present in this picture here. And it's one of only a few churches that existed in 1938 and still exists today, used by the same congregation. At the other end of Church Street is the Hamden Plains United Methodist Church that was there in 1938 and still is. We have the Mount Carmel Congregational Church still there. And the Grace Episcopal Church was right next to Town Hall in 1938 and has moved across the street and become Grace and St. John's Episcopal. Still there, not in the same location. So let's look at what we had for entertainment in 1938. You probably want to go to the movies. Well, this was the Dixwell Playhouse that had photo plays, silent movies. This is when it first opened in the very early 1900s. But in 1937, it burned down, and in 1938, it reopened. This brand new facility here is the opening first double feature they showed there. Sing You Sinners, one of the lesser known movies of Bing Crosby, and an even lesser known Don Amici flick there. And what's notable is the Art Deco, or called sometimes streamlined, more modern style of the building. These curved lines, these strong vertical lines, especially you can see in the drugstore next door, that curvature. And we have an interior view of that theater too. You can see some more of those same design elements. Glass block here in the front also, another typical element of that Art Deco design. We had this one other movie theater in 1938. This is a much later view of the Strand at the corner of Dixwell and Putnam. In fact, this is just shortly before it closed in the 1980s. This is one of the last movies that was shown there as Death Trap. I just find that interesting because in the 1989 tornado, this whole block of building was severely damaged. The building inspector went in and ordered that had to be torn down because, quote, the roof could come down and kill somebody. So at this site today, there's now the Ernest Borgnine Park. We were about to have another theater open in 1940. This is what the site looked like in 1938. This is on Whitney Avenue south of Putnam. These stores here, I'll zoom in on them, are still there today. The building of these stores is still there. I love looking at the grocers here in this market. Their smocks there and looking out the window. And next door to it, this greenhouse no longer stands and was replaced in 1940 by the Whitney Theater. Another place we could see movies here in a much later photo. And to look at the same site today, again, here are the two stores that we saw in the earlier picture and how the theater was. now condos. So continuing with that Art Deco style on Dixwell Avenue, this Himmel Brothers Company, you can see again the glass blocks, the curvatures, the strong vertical and curved lines you can see in this little rooftop decoration here. And what's really especially significant about Himmel Brothers was that they manufactured storefronts. So the style that they have in their own building here was kind of an advertisement for the storefronts they were designing. Were certainly used in probably thousands of stores across the country. And the Himmel Brothers company kind of exists today too. Sometime later it merged with Lead Industries. It's now called Lead Himmel Industries and occupies a building on Leader Hill Road, which was named for that Lead company and another company that was on the street, Pleasant Hill Manufacturing. And another building in the Art Deco style, no longer here unfortunately, and in this photo from I think 1980s, it was already starting to get pretty run down. It is directly across from Hamden Plaza. There's a small plaza with a few stores there now. Zooming in on it here, you can see above what was the main door here, this image, I'll have a better view of it here, in kind of that Art Deco style again. This was the W.I. Clark company originally, and again, this was kind of an ad for what they did. You can just see on the side here a kind of a tractor, bulldozer thing, gears. They made building equipment, and just in this little artwork here, combining it with some of the botanical decorations there, it's another element of Art Deco style. And fortunately, though the building is gone, this tablet here is preserved at the Hamden Government Center. If you've ever been in that building, you can see that tablet preserved there, a little plaque explaining it too. So just south of the Whitney Theater in 1938, that picture we saw earlier, was the Brock Hall Dairy. Of course, most people at this time had milk delivered several times a week. Those small grocery stores, like we saw in that earlier picture too, they only stocked some basic items. You get milk and other dairy products from the milkman. And 1938 was a time in our transition in transportation. And into the very early 1930s, Brock Hall delivered a lot of their milk in horse-drawn wagons like this. I'm pretty sure they were no longer used in 1938, although I understand that in the years of World War II, due to gasoline rationing, for a short time, to a very limited extent for the local deliveries, they brought the horse-drawn wagons back. And it was a time of transition for public transit. Trolleys at one time ran up from New Haven up Dixwell Avenue, Whitney Avenue, and State Street. This is, I think, on one on Whitney Avenue. But actually, in 1937, the Connecticut company, which operated the trolleys, abandoned the Whitney Avenue line. I think it was because it ran all the way to Waterbury, and north of Mount Cromwell had only a single track, so it was difficult to coordinate the passing of trolleys north and south. So they were replaced by buses in 1938. And the trolley tracks were torn up, the wires overhead removed, and they took the opportunity 2 years, you can see, to repave Whitney Avenue in 1938. But trolleys still ran on Dixwell Avenue. Here is one with the sign board in front saying Pershing Street, which is where it terminated, although the tracks did extend a bit farther north to Benham Street. I suppose this one terminated here for the many workers at the Whitney Blake Company at the corner of Pershing and Marne Streets that the building now occupies, has, among other occupants, the Connecticut Department of Labor. And it just happened a few weeks ago, I visited the Shoreline Trolley Museum in East Haven and saw again that same signboard there on a trolley. Well worth a visit to the Shoreline Trolley Museum. because just after the war, again, trolleys persisted in New Haven throughout World War II, and because of gasoline rationing, but they were doomed by the takeover of buses and cars. And this is one of the last trolleys that operated on Dixville Avenue in 1948. It was the D line. And as I mentioned, as the automobile was taking over in 1938, the first section of the Merritt Parkway opened up from the New York State line to Norwalk. This is one of the bridges on that section. You can see how, again, different and open the road looked then. And the last part of the entire parkway system, Merritt and Wilbur Cross Parkways, to be completed was through Hamden because of the difficulty of getting through or around West Rock Ridge and acquiring a lot of property in Hamden. And you can see in this picture from 1949, finally the last bit of it to be completed was the West Rock, now Heroes Tunnel. You see here the first selectman, Michael Whalen, first selectman of Hamden, and the mayor of New Haven, Celentano, shaking hands and celebrating the completion there. And this is what the fire apparatus looked like in 1938. A new pumper being delivered. And the man in the light gray suit off to the side there was a fire commissioner, James Gillies. He died suddenly at not a very old age in 1938. And his death led to the development of the last part of Spring Glen. You can see this ad was placed in the 1939 city directory for Gilridge, Hamden's newest development on the estate of James Gillies. This street on the side of Whitney Avenue and Waite Street in the bottom to give you some idea where what's there now. Bassett Park in the corner here, St. Rita Schools around here, Walgreens at the top there. Bit of irony when James Gillies, as I mentioned, was a fire commissioner, and while he was serving that role, his barn burned down. Another town official passed away in 1938 at a very young age, and he's memorialized in the windows in Town Hall. A Frederick Oberlin was served honorably in World War I. And he came home. He was served as a town engineer, assistant engineer, and designed the Davis Street Bridge, replacing an old covered bridge, Davis Street over Lake Whitney. And in 1938, of course, another reason this year was featured. Of course, in 1938 we had a hurricane throughout the Northeast. Actually, Hamden didn't suffer very badly from it. We did see some flooding here since Dixville Avenue, and so some trees came down in another part of Dixville Avenue. Some trees came down in houses, but it wasn't the widespread devastation it was closer to the shore. And I just thought it'd be interesting to look at some more storefronts here. This is obviously in Centerville Cash Market here. Love the way the grocer and his bow tie is standing outside there. A couple of things to notice here. There's called a cash market because apparently would only accept cash for where you bought groceries there. Like a lot of stores would extend credit to the end of the month. That would imply they could offer somewhat lower prices because they didn't have to deal with bad debts. Another thing to notice is that we're used today to being able to buy anything we want any day of the week, any time of the year. Back then, we didn't have such a sophisticated supply chains. You had to go when things were fresh. Apparently, a fisherman just brought in fresh fish today and advertised in the window what he had that day. Another thing to keep in mind, there's another view of right across, diagonally across from Town Hall, the Centerville drugstore, better known as Charlie Crook's. You can see a display of items in the window there. And here's another view of storefronts just north of that Dixwell Theater on which is at the corner of Cherry Ann Street, so just north of New Haven High. Just looking in the window here, you can see all these shirts offered for 98 cents. And to keep in mind about these stores, for the most part, you had to have the assistance of the clerks to get the items you wanted. Notice how the high items are stocked on the walls there. You had to go up and get them for you. You had to get things out of sacks or pickle barrels there. So it was quite a different shopping experience to today. And never mind the prices, of course. Here's another very old store. They were in the 1800s. The Ives store, and still survives today as Mount Carmel Wine and Spirits. This is a photo from around 1938 showing the clerks in that package store. And I had shown in that bank section picture, is the better close-up of the Hamden Bank and Trust Company. It was founded in the 1920s, failed during the Depression, and was taken over by the Union and New Haven Trust Company. That's what it looked like in 1938. It was operated for years after as Union Trust. And I believe the building was for a while a radio station, but I think now it's just empty, unfortunately. It's a beautiful building. Now, this store opened in 1938, Springland Department Store, and it closed in 1977. It's a picture from a story on its closure almost 40 years later, and it was just packed to the rafters. I remember it well myself. It was just packed to the rafters with merchandise. And again, you had to get the help of the proprietor, Sam Chaikin, who for a time lived in that apartment above the store. And just a couple doors away from, and it's hard to believe, this department store. And it had clothes for the whole family, housewares, almost anything you could want. And the store today is just a hair salon. And a couple of doors north of that was the Springland hardware store. But pretty much between the hardware store and the department store, you get almost anything you needed for your home, your family, without having to go to the stores in New Haven. And the Springland hardware store survived until around 2022. And when the owners wanted to retire, unfortunately, they couldn't find anyone interested in taking it over. They were renovating it to find another use. And when they did that, they gutted the walls, and this is what was in that store in 1938. It was the first national store grocery. You can see along the sides of the wall, fruit, fish, beef, lamb, and poultry sections advertised with tiles built into the wall. So details of the tin roof up there. And that wall was hidden under a plain wall for over 50 years, and unfortunately survived only a week or so before, again, the building inspector took a look at this building. The foundation walls were crumbling and threatening the building next door, and that building sadly had to be torn down. It's still an empty pit today. And we'll have one more view here of what we had for entertainment in 1938. There was a Hamden airport in the early 1930s. A few private planes took off there. It stopped operation by 1938, and as you can see in what it says in the bottom of this slide here, for some in that time, around 1938, every year the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus played there. I think it was easy for them to load the circus, everything they needed for the circus off the circus train coming up the Farmington Canal line there. And the area today, as it says, is now the Hamden Industrial Park. So that's it for here, and just making a appeal for if anyone has old pictures of Hamden, you might look through old photo albums, might just be views of locations in Hamden behind people family, friends that you had pictures of. The Hamden Historical Society would love to have them. So here's our contact information, the website of the Hamden Historical Society. You can find right there the hours our history room is open, other information about us. Join or make a donation. Also, my personal email there if you want to share any stories about any times remembering Hamden. Another great resource, the Facebook group Hamden, Connecticut, landed a sleeping giant, the mighty metropolis. Lots of great information there too. So, hope to hear from you sometime and hope you enjoyed the presentation.